Hi everyone, this is Hazel Borys from Placemakers. We are a city planning firm working around the world, but mostly in Canada and the US. And the background music is my son Roman, who is in the next room in typical Zoom fashion doing a piano lesson, also by Zoom. But anyhow, Placemakers, we do policy planning and physical planning along with community engagement and implementation, mostly in Canada and the US, but a little bit around the world. So thank you for joining me, or letting me join you actually, on this virtual walk through the Serpentine Maze pop-up park. So if you want to find it later on, you go to placemakers.com, click on How We Think, and go to Place Shakers, our blog. And then you'll see the Serpentine Maze here. And so for me, we have been in critical code red for COVID since November 12th. So I was really missing my friends. And so we created this Serpentine Maze, this kind of meditation maze, as a way for us to get together and to spend time together. But so these are 4 of us. There were 7 total that were the maze diggers. And we just, from all of your placemaking studies, that after your basic needs are cared for, that sociability is the #1 indicator for well-being. And so we were trying to create a way that people here could still get together. And so using a pop-up park and using the frozen river, this is the Assiniboine River. And because we're the 3rd coldest big city on Earth, we get on most years to groom our 2 rivers, also the Red River with the longest skating rink on Earth. So it's pretty fun. And so we designed this pop-up park so that the shape of it would automatically physically distance people. And so because it's like shaped like a figure 8, people, and it's more than 6 feet apart, people naturally just walk together but separately. And we, from November 12, this coming Friday, our regulations are going to lift a little bit, but for the last 3 months, we've only been allowed to gather outside, and a maximum of 5 people at a time, and physically distanced. And if you are physically distanced, you don't have to be masked outside. So these are totally every time. So this is early on in the maze building process before we added a lot of stuff to it. But I think one of the things that was important for us was just to be this celebration of us all making it to today, and a little bit of a dirge for all of us who didn't make it to today, but just creating that space for contemplation for that, and also for healthy fun. So we took all of our kind of winter city placemaking best practices for walkability and livability and tried to apply it here. So the first was these winter berries, which are just using some red color to warm up the very cold environment here. Like today it's minus 27 degrees Celsius and the wind chill is like minus 40. So that's where Celsius and Fahrenheit converge. So it's a little nippy outside. So like ensuring that we create these spaces where the coniferous trees create these buffers on either end to be wind blocks. And then you can see here from the shadows above, the deciduous trees are above to let the sunlight through and create sun pits. So we used discarded Christmas trees to be repurposed into these sort of microclimates to create this space that's more enclosed. And we took just little rectangular forms to create the snow block wall, and making sure the sun pit was southern facing so that it was able to be as warm as possible. And so the cool thing about, or the warm thing about this is the space is warm enough that we do snoga here, or yoga in the snow. And we're able to do that until like -10 degrees Celsius with wind chill of -15. And we do chair yoga. So we use the chairs as props and otherwise standing positions. So it's surprising how warm it actually can be. And it's a lot of fun. So the other thing that was kind of tricky at first for us is because this is such an active transportation corridor and people use this river to skate, ski, and sled to work, and also walk and fat bike to work, that we actually did have to deal with it as a multimodal environment. And we had to create this signage to try to get people to not skate down the maze, because when they did, it was hard for us to keep it up with just shovels, because on the big river, those paths are groomed with heavy machines, but we couldn't do that here. So that was like our first bone of contention. And but once everybody got used to that, they've been really awesome about using the space like that. Another thing that we did, we didn't want it to be just about the 7 of us who were friends to create this space. So we invited the community to come in and join us in a poetry contest about winter. And you could either submit your own poem that you give us the right to publish in this way, or you could submit one of your favorite poems from the public domain. Either one would be fine. So like William Carlos Williams, obviously public domain. And then the winners of the submissions their poems got frozen into ice, and they'll stay out here until the river thaws. So it was a super fun way to get people to come outside and still like check out the space, even after like it got really cold and it was a little bit tougher to come out and spend time in the space. And like this person, she's in grade 5, I think. So, it ranges, and this person is in high school. This person is at university. This is one of our city council members. So she's probably in her late 40s. This is one of my friends who I actually have to meet right after my chat with you for tea. And so she's my age. Anyway, it was cool because it got submissions from across all ages and all kind of viewpoints. And this one was one of my favorite ones. Anyway, it was just really fun to like get the whole community to engage. And this one guy sent me he was also a playwright and an actor. So he sent me his poem by video, and I'd just like to play it for you because you can also see the river trail in action.
River Vein by Brian Richardson. In its waltz across the plain, the winds and bends of this prairie vein on its course through eons of time to the open-hearted Gaia is subject always to the weather and the evolving seasons. Rising and falling, it changes pace to the rhythm of the climate, and how often it is embraced by the reaching arms of Arctic, only time itself can know, through many a slowing of the flow and blanketing with snow. In this moment that is but a trice, humans step into the dance, swaying with every slice of skate upon the ice, of every ski glide in a track, of footsteps on a trail when winter prevails.
So that was fun. I don't know if you could really tell, but this is the Serpentine Maze here. So it's kind of, and here's like that sun pit thing. So that's kind of what that was. So I felt like that, having the pop-up park somehow engage a broader audience than just the set of people who was literally doing all the heavy lifting for it, I think was a really fun part of the whole process. Because you live in a winter city and because you could easily do some of these ideas, one of the things here was I borrowed 5-gallon pails from one of my friends who owns a florist, and I kept them for 3 days, and another friend who owns a florist supply donated the winter berries, and I just arranged them in the pail and filled them up with water and set them outside my apartment on the balcony and let them freeze into these ice vases. So that was really fun. And it's ended up getting a whole lot of media attention, which is great. But I think the important part about pop-up parks in general is it's really helping us to recover from the pandemic in important ways. So we also wrote a pandemic toolkit, and it's 22 actions that all local governments can take to help the economy recover, both the household budgets and business budgets and municipal budgets. And so action 4 is enable outdoor learning via the use of parkland. Action 9 is expedite temporary uses. And action 10 is increase access to nature via pocket parks. So if you want to check out the pandemic toolkit, that's just yet another Spark page. I love Spark because it just helps you build these fun, very engaging sort of websites. So, the actions here of what the action is, how you implement the action, its policy changes via municipal or provincial or state governments, and it engages the public. And then each of the actions have a link to whatever we felt was the best practice for that action at hand. And so we probably don't have enough time to go all the way through the pandemic toolkit, but one of the important things about the toolkit is so many of these actions, it's like, oh, well, when you read the action, it's like, well, obviously everyone is enabling outdoor dining. That's true, but the way most people are enabling it is developing some sort of temporary patio registration form that deals with all of the general safety requirements and right-of-way requirements for expansion into all of the different public spaces. But instead of doing that, the other thing you could do is just draft a city council or a town council proclamation to allow this to happen without an application or fees. And you still clearly state what the rules are and what the indemnification is. So if I own a cafe and I take a table outside my door and put a lemonade stand on it and sell my first glass of lemonade, I am saying by that action that I am indemnifying the city in this way. And so this is an example from one of our clients in Langley, Washington, where they just lay out what those regulations are. And once you do that action, that you are going to comply with all this, and that there are no application fees, and just go to towns, literally. So for us, we think that that's so important to remove every barrier to recovery of, of the economy without hurting, while protecting well-being. And for us, we realize that outdoor dining, the biggest challenge is what happens in the winter. So this is a pop-up restaurant we have in Winnipeg called Raw Almond. It is not happening this year thanks to COVID, but these are pictures from previous years. And so some of the things that they've learned about outdoor ventilation and involving architects and engineers in the process for outdoor pop-up restaurants have made them much more successful in their process. So I'm not going to walk you all the way through the toolkit. You can come back and check it out later on and see, what it has to say. The fact that all the things that make these interventions not usually work. Like for in-home occupation, cities still have high parking requirements and restricted signage and limitation on the number of employees. So, you know, these are still the ways that even if you engage in this action, you have to probably do extra stuff to make it work in a time of pandemic. But the other thing I wanted to share with you about the Pandemic Toolkit, which I really enjoyed this process. This is my friend Jason Savaxe, who is one of the co-authors of the toolkit. But one of the things I really, really loved also is the toolkit originally came from a shared Google sheet that I created at the beginning of the pandemic because I was just really depressed about how overwhelming the news cycle was and how it felt like we were stuck and we couldn't really do anything. So I started this compendium, which basically, sorry, let me get to the link to it. It is, oops, okay. It's different in every language. So this is now in 8 languages and in some of the other languages, I put it right at the bottom, but here it is in action number 19 of developing a pandemic preparedness plan. So the compendium is basically just this Google sheet that everyone who has the link to it, which is a public link, and you can get to it through the Pandemic Toolkit, has the right to edit. And so I will just put this in chat actually. So it's cool because it became very much a crowdsourced document that, you know, everyone could just add to and to say, okay, this is the most important action. The most important action is to prioritize equity, inclusivity, and justice. And that's what you should do first. But then after that, the second action is actually the easiest action. And so actions 2 through, actually, I think there's 39 or something, that they go from easier to harder. I mean, action number 1 is clearly the hardest, but then after that, they go from easiest to hardest. And then they are organized by pre-vaccine, post-vaccine, or long-term, and whether the intervention is on the scale of the block, street, and building, or the scale of the neighborhood, district, and corridor, or the scale of the region. So anyhow, that was really, I love this process of, you know, creating this document that people could just keep adding to. So it became this community where we could get together and just encourage each other with cool stuff that other people are doing. And so even though the Pandemic Toolkit only includes my favorite example of each of these, there's also a ton of other examples of other places who are doing good stuff for each of these actions. So each row has all these different links. So later on, if you want to check it out and add to it, please feel free. The only thing that we ask is if you make your changes in red so we can check them out and add them to the toolkit if it makes sense to do so. So back to the Serpentine Maze, which is why you wanted me here in the first place, to take this little tour together. And if you really were going to get on to an airplane and fly up to Winnipeg and we were able to walk the maze, the other important thing that I haven't really told you is that right beside the maze, so you can see it really, the sun pit right here in action between these 2 buildings, and I live in this building, so I get to spy on the maze all the time. But these trails are the ones that are groomed by the Forks, which is an organization that's where the 2 rivers meet. And so it's an arm's length organization to the city of Winnipeg. And so they groom this skating trail and this walking, fat biking, kick sledding trail, and then 2 trails for cross-country skiing. So we worked really closely with them because as you are going through and doing your own pop-up park and your own tactical urbanism in Cleveland, like the first thing you'll have to start asking yourself is, A, am I going to take the liability for doing this? What if somebody falls through this river and what happens then? So we decided that there's no chance we wanted to take that kind of liability. So we just worked with the Forks Corporation from the beginning and asked them, if we could kind of get under their liability umbrella. And so they are the ones who say if the river conditions are safe for people to be out there. And, occasionally they'll close this part of the river, and then the Serpentine Maze is closed too. And so they just asked us to send them our plans for the maze early on. I also wanted to make sure they wouldn't bulldoze us once we spent that much time building it. So for us, that was a really important part of it. And I think that's like one of the most important parts of tactical urbanism. It's short-term action for long-term change. And if it's a short-term action that you're probably like, if your odds are super, super, super low that anyone's going to get hurt by your action, like if you're going to be a guerrilla gardener or something and just go, plant some beautiful flowers, well, you probably don't have to ask anyone's permission. But if you're going to go out in the middle of traffic and, paint new crosswalks somewhere, you might get in trouble. So, figuring out which part of your pop-up park you should ask permission for and which part of your pop-up park you could just do on your own, I think is probably the most important question you'll have to ask yourself for how you want to go about this. But as you can see, like on any given weekend, this place is just packed with people, and it's such an awesome place to be. People are in every possible part of the river, and I'm down there 2 or 3 times a day, partly because my dog forces me to go, but also partly just because it's so fun. And so even during this time, we will do blended soups or, whatever warm drinks and take them down there and hang out. And then also as part of the river trails, there is a warming huts competition that is in its 11th year now. And so architects and city planners and artists come in from all over the world and propose their warming huts, and then they get put all along the trail of the river. And it becomes like this really fun and engaging place. So sorry, I probably talked too long. I have 3 more minutes if you have questions for me.
No, that was great. We really appreciate you going through all of that with us. I feel like I have 100 questions, but if anyone else wants to jump in, let's take advantage of these last couple minutes.
Thanks for all your comments in the comment section. It has been super fun. Unmute Jack and Zach.
Hold on. Yeah, sorry. We were just talking. Since I missed, I got a phone call, but I was asking kind of about what the official process was for like creating the park, and he was telling me about the CDC, the Forks, and that was our conversation.
Gotcha. I did ask permission only because it's on ice, and if people fall through the ice, I didn't want to be like completely taking responsibility for that. But the process was I was going on all these physically distanced walks with my friends in November and December, and we got like, that was fun and everything, but that's literally the only way we could be together. And so we just decided to do something that was a little bit more active, a little bit more cardio and strength training, but also so that we could get back to the community some way. So we did ask permission to be in the public realm only because it was a high danger, proposition. It's always hard to decide if you're going to ask forgiveness or ask permission. We decided to ask permission.
This just makes me want to, we should get together as the APA crew and just get some hammers and nails and start building some parklets around campus or something. Take off some of these lanes from like 22nd, make it benches.
We also have a group in our city, I think it's just called Winnipeg Trails, and they have built 30 cross-country skiing trails and walking trails throughout our city, and they just add benches and they do snow sculptures in every place. Sometimes they do up to 3 trails or 3 installations in a day, and they've gotten the city council to give them like several $1,000s to do it. And then they also have this super cool thing called planebicycle.org. It's the bicycle garden, and now it's the icicle garden. And so they rent cross-country skis and snowshoes, but it's on a sliding scale. So if you can't afford to pay them, they just loan them to you for free. They don't even like get any credit card information. They just say basically, see you whenever you come back. And then they also like take skis out to all of these different 30 trails and just let people try them. And that's been super fun as well. And so sometimes they'll also set up like, you know, hot chocolate stands, or sometimes they'll get a license to do mulled wine or hot toddy stands. And they're just having a blast, and they're making our city so awesome. That would work really well in Cleveland. Okay, I have to hop, but thank you for having me. See you later. Have fun.
Thanks so much for coming. We really appreciate it. That was great.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thanks for letting me Zoom bomb you.